Welcome to Vanguard, where humans aren't the underdogs. We're the endgame. Enjoy the journey. The alien fleets moved through hyperspace with the effortless grace of civilizations that had long since mastered the stars. Their vessels were elegant, silver forms that sliced through distorted space like arrows through silk, leaving barely a ripple behind them. This was not a military deployment. Despite the presence of three separate fleets, there was no urgency, no tension, no sense of danger. This was a ceremonial journey, one repeated countless times across millennia. They were heading toward a small yellow star at the edge of a quiet spiral arm. The locals called it Sol. On the bridge of the Zion flagship, Ambassador Zalfak studied the projected data streams with all four of his eyes. He was tall and thin, his blue-gray skin shimmering faintly under the soft lighting of the command deck. Among his people, the Zion, diplomacy was considered the highest art. War was crude, violence was inefficient. Knowledge and technological superiority had rendered such things obsolete long ago. Estimated arrival? Zalfak asked calmly. 3 hours, Ambassador, replied the navigation officer. We will exit hyperspace at the standard observation boundary. Zalfak nodded. 3 hours until first contact. 3 hours until another young species took its first step into the greater galactic order. He had reviewed the human data personally, multiple times. Humans were disappointing. They had only discovered faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, and even then their drives were unstable, inefficient, and limited in range. Their largest vessels barely exceeded 300 meters in length. They possessed no energy shielding of note, no advanced artificial intelligence, and no meaningful interstellar infrastructure. Most of their population was still bound to a single planetary gravity well, divided by borders, ideologies, and endless internal conflict. Primitive, by any reasonable standard. On a nearby vessel, General Brethar of the Korik reviewed the same intelligence with a far less patient expression. The Korik were massive, bear-like beings covered in thick red fur, their bodies shaped by a distant evolutionary history of brutal planetary warfare. Once, long ago, they had been conquerors. Now they were peacekeepers, enforcers of Confederation law, a role that suited their strength without demanding the savagery of true war. These humans still fight each other, Brethar rumbled, his deep voice resonating through the command chamber. They cannot even unite their own world. His officers growled in agreement. The reports were clear. Humans still relied on projectile weapons that fired metal slugs. Their aircraft required atmospheric lift. Their soldiers fought and died in regional conflicts over ideology, resources, and identity. From the Korik perspective, it was like watching a species trapped in an endless adolescence. How can such a people contribute to galactic peace? Brethar continued. They will resist at first. They always do. But resistance fades when shown the proper example. He did not mean violence, not directly. The Confederation had learned long ago that fear was inefficient. Much better to overwhelm a young species with benevolence, technology, and the quiet certainty that opposition was pointless. The Third Fleet belonged to the Veiltor, an ancient race of floating energy beings whose forms resembled luminous jellyfish drifting through the void. They were scholars, archivists, and historians. For over 5,000 years, they had recorded the rise and integration of emerging civilizations, cataloging cultural patterns and societal outcomes with meticulous care. Elder Wisdom Keeper floated in silent meditation within his chamber, surrounded by holographic representations of humanity's history. He had seen this pattern before, countless times. Young species always believed themselves unique. They clung to their myths, their independence, their sense of exceptionalism. And then, slowly, inevitably, they learned the truth, that they were small, inexperienced, and in need of guidance. Prepare the standard welcome package, Wisdom Keeper instructed softly. Medical advancements, clean energy schematics, and basic interstellar communication protocols. Include the junior membership framework. His assistants complied without question. The process was refined to near perfection. First contact was not improvisation, it was choreography. The Galactic Confederation had expanded slowly and carefully for over 2,000 years. They did not conquer, they integrated. They offered peace, stability, and prosperity in exchange for cooperation. Wars between member species had vanished centuries ago. Poverty and disease were historical curiosities. Culture flourished when survival was no longer a concern. But primitive species required patience. Humans, according to every projection, would be granted junior membership. They would receive limited access to Confederation technology, oversight in military development, and strict population and expansion controls. In time, perhaps centuries, they might earn full citizenship if they proved cooperative. Zalfak reviewed the human dossier once more. No orbital defenses of significance. No unified planetary command structure. Their fastest vessels barely reached a fraction of relativistic speed. Some humans still lived in structures built from wood and stone, reliant on fossilized biological matter for energy. "They're almost charming," one of his aides remarked quietly. Zalfak allowed a faint expression of amusement. Like hatchlings attempting flight, the Confederation's record was flawless. In 2 millennia of first contact, no species had rejected integration outright. Some resisted longer than others. Some required firmer guidance. But all eventually recognized the benefits of belonging to something greater. Humans would be no different. The fleets continued their approach, their crews experiencing the familiar mixture of anticipation and mild pity. First contact was always historic, but rarely surprising. The script was well worn. The primitives would react with awe or fear. There would be confusion, emotional responses, perhaps even hostility born of misunderstanding. And then, slowly, reassurance would take hold. The humans would be shown a galaxy without war, without scarcity, without chaos. They would be grateful. None of the alien leaders considered the possibility that their intelligence was incomplete. None questioned the assumption that technological maturity followed a single, predictable path. And none imagined that the species awaiting them had spent decades watching the galaxy in silence, learning its patterns and preparing, not to join, but to stand apart. As the silver ships closed the final distance toward the Sol system, confidence reigned across every bridge. Space ahead appeared empty and peaceful, a small blue world rotating quietly beneath the distant glow of its star. Appearances, after all, had never deceived the Confederation before. The 3 fleets emerged from hyperspace exactly as planned, their transitions precise to the millisecond. Space snapped back into familiar geometry, stars settling into fixed positions as the distortion faded. Ahead of them lay the Sol system, quiet, unremarkable, and exactly as their long-range scouts had described. A small yellow star burned steadily at its center. Several rocky planets traced predictable orbits. One blue-green world stood out, wrapped in wisps of white cloud, its single moon glinting softly in reflected sunlight. Earth. Ambassador Zalfak stepped forward on the bridge of his flagship, straightening his ceremonial mantle. This was his moment. The honor of delivering first contact greetings was not given lightly among the Zion. It required decades of diplomatic service, flawless judgment, and an unbroken record of successful integrations. "Open all diplomatic channels," he ordered. "Begin broadcasting the standard greeting package in all detected human languages." The command was executed instantly. Carefully encoded signals radiated outward, carrying messages of peace, friendship, and welcome. The words had been refined over centuries, designed to sound reassuring without condescension, authoritative without threat. "People of Earth," Zalfak began, his voice translated seamlessly across linguistic frameworks. "We are representatives of the Galactic Confederation. We come in peace to welcome you into the wider community of civilized worlds." He paused, as protocol demanded, allowing time for the message to be received, processed, and, typically, met with confusion. Seconds passed. Then, almost immediately, A response arrived. Not garbled, not hesitant, not emotional. Unknown alien vessels. A clear human voice said, steady and professional. This is Earth traffic control. You have entered Terran space without prior authorization or established diplomatic clearance. State your intentions and maintain your current positions while your presence is verified. The bridge fell silent. Zalfak blinked all four of his eyes in rapid succession. This was unexpected. Earth traffic control? Primitive species did not have traffic control for interplanetary space. They had no need for it. Their vessels, according to the data, rarely left low planetary orbit. And yet the human voice had spoken with calm authority, issuing instructions rather than requests. On the Korik command ship, General Brethar leaned forward, his massive claws resting on the edge of the tactical display. That is not a civilian broadcast, one of his officers muttered. The tone is disciplined. Communications officers across all three fleets scrambled to analyze the signal. The transmission was clean, encrypted, and layered with redundancies that suggested long experience with hostile environments. General, a Korik technician reported cautiously, human internal channels are active. They are coordinating traffic across multiple orbital platforms. Brethar's fur bristled. Impossible. The scouts reported minimal orbital infrastructure. The data scrolling across the screen disagreed with him. Back on the Zion flagship, Zalfak forced his posture to remain composed. This is Ambassador Zalfak of the Galactic Confederation, he replied. Our presence is peaceful and prearranged under standard first contact protocols. There was a brief pause. Ambassador, the human voice responded, we are aware of your identity. However, no entry permission has been granted. Please remain stationary. Awareness. That single word sent a ripple of unease through the alien command crews. Awareness implied preparation. It implied context. Elder Wisdom Keeper stirred within his meditation chamber, the soft glow of his energy form pulsing more brightly. In 5,000 years of observing first contact scenarios, he had never heard a newly contacted species speak with such confidence. They are not reacting as children, he observed quietly. They speak as peers. Zalfak frowned. Perhaps they are attempting to assert dignity, a common psychological defense. Yet even as he spoke, doubt crept into his thoughts. The humans were not stalling. They were not asking questions. They were not marveling at the sight of alien vessels hanging in their sky. They were managing traffic. Sensors continued to feed new data into the alien systems. Human satellites adjusted their orbits. Several previously unnoticed installations activated, their power signatures flaring briefly before settling into controlled output. Ambassador, a Zion analyst said hesitantly, we are detecting coordinated sensor sweeps originating from Earth orbit. They are mapping our fleet formations. Zalfak stiffened. Mapping? Yes, actively, with surprising precision. On the Korik ship, Brethar growled low in his chest. They're treating us like unknown variables, not honored guests. The human voice returned, cutting through the tension with measured calm. Galactic Confederation vessels, be advised. Your current vector places you within restricted orbital approach corridors. Any course adjustments must be approved. A Korik officer slammed a claw against the console. They're issuing flight regulations to us. Restrain yourself, Brethar snapped, though his own patience was thinning. This is irregular, but not yet hostile. Wisdom Keeper floated closer to his displays, ancient instincts sharpening. Something about this encounter felt fundamentally wrong. The humans were not improvising. Their responses were too immediate, too structured. They had procedures. Continue standard diplomatic engagement, he advised. Do not escalate. Zalfak nodded reluctantly. Earth traffic control, he said, carefully modulating his tone. You are experiencing a historic moment. First contact with the Galactic Confederation has occurred. There is no cause for concern. We understand the significance, the human replied. which is precisely why unregulated movement is not permitted. Silence followed. Across all three fleets, officers exchanged uneasy glances. This was not resistance fueled by fear. It was control fueled by confidence. Then, without warning, several alien sensor arrays registered a brief anomaly at the edge of the system. It was subtle, little more than a fluctuation in background radiation, but it was enough to trigger automated alerts. "Sensor glitch?" a Zion technician asked. "No," came the reply. "It's localized, like a shadow." Wisdom Keeper's glow dimmed slightly as his attention sharpened. "Mark that region," he instructed, "and continue observation." The human voice spoke again, softer this time, but no less firm. "Ambassador Zalfak, verification is ongoing. Please stand by." "Stand by." The phrase echoed uncomfortably through the alien command decks. They had crossed half the galaxy, expecting gratitude, awe, and obedience. Instead, they found themselves waiting for permission in the presence of a species that was supposed to be barely spacefaring. Zalfak folded his hands behind his back, forcing calm into his thoughts. This was a deviation, nothing more, an anomaly that would soon be corrected. And yet, deep within his mind, an unfamiliar sensation took hold. For the first time in his long diplomatic career, the script was no longer in his hands. Something in the darkness of the Sol system was watching, and whatever it was not impressed. The warning alarms erupted across every alien vessel at the same instant. Sharp tones sliced through the quiet confidence that had filled the command decks only moments before. Tactical displays flared red as sensor arrays recalibrated themselves in frantic cycles, struggling to process an event that should not have been possible. "Hyperspace rupture detected," a Zion sensor officer announced, disbelief threading through his voice. "Magnitude unprecedented." On the Korik flagship, General Brethar rose to his full height, towering over his officers. "Source?" "Edge of the system," came the reply. "Mass reading is—" The officer hesitated, claws frozen above the console. "Larger than anything on record." Space itself appeared to bend. At the outer boundary of the Sol system, reality distorted violently, as though something enormous were forcing its way into normal space by sheer will. The stars behind the distortion stretched into thin lines, then snapped back as the rupture collapsed inward. And then it emerged. The human warship was colossal, over a kilometer in length, its silhouette brutal and unmistakably martial. Where Confederation vessels favored flowing curves and elegant symmetry, this ship was all hard angles and layered armor. Its hull was segmented by thick plating designed to absorb punishment, not deflect it. Weapon ports dotted its surface like the eyes of a predatory insect, each one tracking independently. The ship did not drift. It advanced. "By the first light," a Zion officer whispered, "that's not a vessel. It's a fortress." Energy readings spiked across alien sensors, forcing emergency dampening systems to activate. The power output pouring from the human ship was staggering, greater than some orbital stations the Confederation maintained around major worlds. Elder Wisdom Keeper felt a ripple of unease course through his ancient consciousness. "This is no ceremonial craft," he said slowly. "This is a warship." On the human vessel's bridge, Captain Sarah Chun stood with her hands clasped behind her back, eyes fixed on the tactical display. She did not raise her voice when she spoke. "Broadcast on all channels," she ordered. "Priority command frequency." The transmission cut through alien communications like a blade. "Unknown vessels," Chun said calmly. "This is Captain Sarah Chun of the United Earthship Prometheus. You have approximately 30 seconds to explain your presence in this system before I consider you a hostile force." The words hit harder than any weapon. 30 seconds. On the Korik ship, Brethar stared at the display in stunned silence. The human vessel was not posturing. Its movement vectors showed deliberate, controlled acceleration, far too precise for something of that mass. "They're maneuvering like trained combat crews," his tactical officer murmured. This isn't theoretical capability, this is experience. Ambassador Zalfak felt something cold settle in his chest. Captain Chun, he said quickly, forcing authority into his voice. I am Ambassador Zalfak of the Galactic Confederation. There has been a misunderstanding. We are here on a peaceful, diplomatic mission. I'm aware of who you are, Ambassador, Chun replied without hesitation. My concern is why you entered Terran space without authorization. Her tone carried no hostility, no fear, only control. Sensors continued to scream warnings as the Prometheus closed distance. Its point defense systems tracked alien ships effortlessly, targeting arrays adjusting faster than Korok reflexes could follow. This cannot be, Brethar growled. Our intelligence was wrong, his lieutenant finished quietly. Elder Wisdom Keeper floated closer to his projection field, ancient intuition racing ahead of logic. The humans were not reacting like a species surprised by first contact. They were reacting like one executing a contingency plan. Ambassador, he said gently, we may wish to reconsider our assumptions. Before Zalfak could respond, Captain Chun spoke again. General Brethar, she said, addressing him directly, your escort formation places your vessels in overlapping fire arcs. I suggest maintaining current orientation. Brethar's eyes widened. How does she know? Because, Chun continued, we've already run the engagement simulations. Across the alien fleets, tactical officers exchanged looks of dawning horror. The human ship was not merely observing them, it was analyzing them in real time. A Korok officer swallowed. General, she's accurate. Our current configuration would result in crossfire within 6 seconds of engagement. Brethar's pride flared. Enough, he snarled. We represent the combined authority of 1,000 worlds. And yet, Chun replied evenly, your combined firepower is approximately 1/3 that of a single human destroyer. Silence followed. The statement was not an insult, it was a calculation. Lieutenant Vraktor stared at his display, claws trembling. General, she's right. Brethar felt the truth of it like a physical blow. Every assumption he had ever held about military superiority cracked under the weight of raw data. Still, pride was a powerful thing. Signal the escort squadron, he ordered harshly. Assume attack formation. No weapons discharge, just enough to demonstrate capability. Elder Wisdom Keeper's glow flared sharply. General, do not. It was too late. The moment Korok ships altered formation, the Sol system exploded into motion. Human vessels appeared as if from nowhere. Stealth fields dropped across the system, revealing warships hidden behind asteroids, in planetary shadows, and within regions of sensor noise the aliens had dismissed as natural interference. Dozens of human ships decloaked in perfect synchronization, each one locking into precise intercept vectors. 47. Every single one a warship. The Prometheus surged forward, acceleration that should have torn its structure apart, somehow held perfectly in check. Captain Chun's voice cut across all channels, sharp and absolute. Korok vessels, return to defensive posture immediately. Any further aggressive action will be treated as hostile intent. Brethar's fur bristled with rage and disbelief. You dare threaten us? We're not threatening you, Chun replied. We're informing you. The human ships moved with terrifying coordination, their formations fluid, adaptive, and unmistakably lethal. These were not ceremonial fleets. They were instruments of war, refined by centuries of preparation. Elder Wisdom Keeper felt a chill ripple through his being. In thousands of years of galactic history, he had never witnessed such a reversal. The primitives were not outmatched. They were in control. As the countdown ticked away, Ambassador Zalfak realized a truth he had never considered possible. The Confederation had not arrived to welcome a child civilization into the galaxy. They had arrived uninvited, at the doorstep of a power that had been waiting. For a single, fragile moment, no one fired. Alien bridges across the 3 fleets were frozen in stunned silence, their crews watching tactical displays that now showed an impossible reality. Human warships had taken control of the battle space in less than a minute. Intercept vectors overlap with surgical precision. Firing solutions existed from angles the Confederation's simulations had never considered. General Brethar's claws dug into the edge of his command console. Every instinct born of his species' ancient warrior past screamed that he was surrounded by predators, and that he had already made a fatal mistake. "General," Lieutenant Vactor whispered, "human vessels have full weapons lock." Brethar's jaw tightened. "They won't fire," he growled. "This is posturing. No species escalates first contact into open war." On the Prometheus, Captain Sarah Chun listened calmly as her tactical officer confirmed readiness across all batteries. "Point defense online. Main arrays charged. All targets tracked." Chun nodded once. "Execute demonstration. Minimum yield." The order rippled outward through the human fleet like a silent commandment. Along the hull of the Prometheus, hundreds of weapon ports opened in perfect synchronization. They did not flare or roar. They simply adjusted, each one aligning with mechanical inevitability. Targeting systems tracked alien ships down to micro-adjustments in hull vibration and power fluctuation. On alien bridges, warning indicators exploded to life. "Targeting spikes. Energy buildup detected. Brace!" A single beam lanced out from the Prometheus. It was not the wild, unfocused energy discharge the Confederation expected. It was a narrow, coherent stream of plasma so tightly contained that it barely disturbed the surrounding vacuum. The beam passed through space like a surgeon's blade, slicing between two Korak cruisers with impossible precision. The beam missed by exactly 1 meter. That meter might as well have been a universe. Every alien sensor registered the discharge. Hull stress monitors screamed as proximity energy cascades rippled across shielding systems that had not been designed to handle such focused output. Several Korak ships lost secondary power for a fraction of a second, their systems rebooting in confusion as alien computers struggled to interpret what they had just survived. "Damage report," Brethar roared. "No direct impact," came the stunned reply, but multiple subsystems destabilized by residual energy. On the Zion flagship, Ambassador Zalfak felt his knees weaken. The human shot had not been an attack. It had been a lesson. Elder Wisdom Keeper floated in silence, ancient awareness expanding as realization took hold. "They did not fire at you," he said softly. "They demonstrated restraint." Across the system, human warships held position, weapons still trained, but unmoving. They had proven their point. Further escalation was unnecessary. Captain Chun's voice returned, steady and unraised. "Consider that your warning," she said. "Any further deviation from your current posture will be interpreted as hostile intent." The Korak bridge was deathly quiet. Brethar's pride shattered under the weight of what he now understood. If the humans had intended to destroy them, the fleet would already be debris. The warning shot had not been meant to intimidate. It had been meant to clarify reality. Lieutenant Vactor swallowed. "General, their targeting systems predicted our evasive algorithms. They weren't reacting to us. They were anticipating us." Brethar said nothing. All around the Sol system, human ships adjusted slightly, tightening the encirclement. Some emerged fully from stealth, revealing hulls designed not for beauty, but for endurance. Armor plating overlapped in brutal efficiency. Heat vents glowed faintly, bleeding off controlled power rather than excess. These ships were not built to win quick wars. They were built to survive long ones. "How many?" Zalfak asked quietly. A Zion analyst checked the readings twice before answering. 47 confirmed warships. No civilian vessels detected. Zalfak's skin darkened, the Zion equivalent of blanching. "All military?" "Yes, Ambassador." Elder Wisdom Keeper felt the full weight of the moment settle over him. "This species did not stumble into strength," he said. "They chose it." Captain Chun continued, her tone almost conversational. "Ambassador Zalfak, you came expecting a developing civilization. What you encountered instead is a sovereign defense network that has been active for decades. Brethar found his voice at last, though it came out hoarse. You would risk war with the Confederation? Chun did not hesitate. We would avoid it at all costs, but we will never accept protection that requires submission. Her words cut deeper than any weapon. Around them, the human fleet waited, not impatiently, not aggressively, but with the quiet confidence of professionals who knew exactly how much time they could afford. Zalfak struggled to regain diplomatic footing. Captain Chun, he said carefully, this hostility is unnecessary. The Confederation offers stability, protection, prosperity, and oversight, Chun replied. Restrictions, dependency. Zalfak opened his mouth to protest, then stopped. He could not deny it outright, not with Elder Wisdom Keeper listening. The ancient Veiltor spoke again, his voice thoughtful rather than accusatory. Captain Chun, how long have your people been preparing for this encounter? There was a brief pause. 52 years, Chun answered. Ever since we detected deep space communication traffic that didn't belong to us. The words struck like a seismic event. 52 years. The humans had known about the galaxy longer than some junior member species had existed. Brethar exhaled slowly, the last of his defiance draining away. You've been watching us. Yes, Chun said simply, listening, learning. As if on cue, a new display activated on alien screens. Human-controlled, undeniable. It showed sensor coverage across the Sol system, extending far beyond what alien scouts had ever detected. Monitoring stations, hidden platforms, and patrol routes overlapped in a web of surveillance that left no blind spot unaccounted for. Zalfak stared in disbelief. You hid all of this deliberately. We didn't hide, Chun corrected. You didn't look where it mattered. Silence fell once more. This time, it was not confusion that held the alien fleets quiet. It was understanding. For the first time since the Confederation's founding, an emerging species had not begged for inclusion or recoiled in fear. Humanity had met them with calm readiness, overwhelming capability, and an unambiguous message. We are not your children. As the human ships maintained their silent encirclement, Elder Wisdom Keeper reached a conclusion that chilled even his ancient heart. The galaxy had not discovered humanity. Humanity had simply decided it was time to be seen. The docking bay of the Prometheus was vast, utilitarian, and brutally honest. There were no banners, no ceremonial lighting, no symbols meant to inspire awe or reverence. The space was designed for one purpose only: efficiency under pressure. Magnetic clamps locked into place as the alien shuttle settled onto the deck, its smooth, elegant hull looking almost fragile amid the angular steel architecture surrounding it. Captain Sarah Chun stood waiting with a small honor detail, unarmed, alert, and unmistakably in control. The hatch opened. Ambassador Zalfak emerged first, his four eyes taking in every detail with professional restraint that barely concealed his unease. Behind him came General Brethar, his massive frame tense, fur darker than usual, a choric sign of stress. Last was Elder Wisdom Keeper, his luminous form contained within a specialized mobility field designed to function in material environments. The moment they stepped fully onto the deck, Zalfak understood something fundamental. This ship was not built to impress visitors. It was built to survive war. Welcome aboard the Prometheus, Captain Chun said evenly. I trust your journey was uneventful. Zalfak inclined his head. Your docking procedures are remarkably advanced. Chun allowed a faint, knowing smile. You'll find that applies to most things here. They moved through the corridors in silence at first. The walls were thick, layered, and modular. Emergency bulkheads were positioned at regular intervals, capable of sealing entire sections within seconds. Power conduits were redundantly shielded. Even the lighting adjusted dynamically, ensuring visibility under fluctuating gravity and power conditions. General Brethar's military instincts cataloged everything automatically. This is not a diplomatic vessel. No, Chun replied. It's classified as a deep space reconnaissance cruiser. Brethar stopped walking. A reconnaissance cruiser, he repeated slowly. Yes, Chun said. Designed for first contact scenarios and extended independent operations in potentially hostile regions. Elder Wisdom Keeper drifted closer to one of the walls, sensing the hum of contained energy within. Then you possess larger vessels. Oh yes, Chun said casually. Much larger. The Korik general's silence spoke volumes. They passed through the medical bay next. Human personnel moved with calm efficiency, surrounded by equipment that operated on principles the Confederation had abandoned centuries ago as too unstable. Regenerative systems, neural stabilization arrays, trauma interfaces that could reconstruct tissue in real time. Zalfak felt a flicker of professional humiliation. These were technologies the Confederation would have offered humans as gifts, technologies humanity had clearly surpassed on its own. Then came engineering. The heart of the Prometheus was a cathedral of controlled violence. Power cores humming with barely restrained output, field stabilizers layered in triplicate, systems designed to operate far beyond nominal limits without catastrophic failure. This output level, Zalfak said quietly, would be considered unsafe by Confederation standards. Dr. Elena Vasquez looked up from her console, smiling brightly. By your standards, yes. By ours, it's conservative. She tapped her tablet, bringing up a schematic of the ship's power flow. The efficiency curves alone were enough to make the alien delegation uncomfortable. Finally, they reached the weapons deck. If engineering had been a cathedral, this was an altar. Massive gun housings stretched away in both directions, each one secured by reinforced structural supports. Control systems monitored heat, stress, targeting data, and power allocation with obsessive precision. These are our main batteries, Captain Chun said. 16 heavy plasma cannons, effective penetration, approximately 3 meters of reinforced titanium alloy. General Brether's voice was low. That exceeds most Confederation capital ships. Dr. Vasquez nodded cheerfully. Those are secondary weapons. Silence fell. The primary system, she continued, as if discussing weather patterns, is the particle beam array, much cleaner for ship-to-ship engagements. Brethar swallowed. How many weapons does this vessel carry? Vasquez consulted her tablet. 437 individual systems, including point defense, anti-ship, and anti-planetary capabilities. Simultaneous engagement capacity, over 200 targets. Ambassador Zalfak felt the last remnants of his prepared diplomatic framework collapse. A single human ship carried more firepower than entire Confederation battle groups. Why, he asked finally, why build such destructive capability? Captain Chun led them to an observation deck. Earth hung in the distance, blue and serene against the black. Because, Chun said quietly, we learned early that peace is fragile, and that those who rely on others for protection eventually lose the ability to choose. Elder Wisdom Keepers studied the planet, ancient thoughts aligning into a disturbing pattern. You knew we were coming, he said. How long have you been preparing? Dr. Vasquez smiled. Would you like the technical answer or the simple one? Technical, Wisdom Keeper replied. We detected Confederation communication networks 52 years ago, Vasquez said. We've been intercepting and decoding transmissions ever since. We mapped your expansion routes, your diplomatic protocols, your military doctrines, and your political structures. Zalfak felt dizzy. 52 years. We've had advance notice of your arrival for 18 months, Chun added. The delegation exchanged stunned looks. You've been watching us, Brethar said. Yes, Chun replied, carefully. Vasquez activated a display. Data filled the air. Charts, timelines, statistical projections. During our analysis, she continued, we noticed something interesting. 93% of species granted junior membership never advanced to full status. Zalfak bristled. That's a misrepresentation. Advancement requires cultural alignment. Exactly, Vasquez said calmly. Cultural absorption. loss of autonomy, economic dependency. She brought up historical records, species after species, unique civilizations slowly becoming indistinguishable from one another. Elder Wisdom Keeper watched in silence, the implications striking deeper with every example. You offer safety, Chun said, at the cost of identity. Zalfak protested weakly. They gain peace. They gain comfortable extinction, Vasquez replied. From a human perspective, that's not survival. The words hung in the air, sharp and unyielding. For the first time in thousands of years, the Confederation's philosophy was being examined not with reverence, but with data. Elder Wisdom Keeper floated closer to the viewport. What do you want from us? He asked at last. Captain Chun did not answer immediately. When she did, her voice was steady. Recognition, she said, that humanity is not a junior species, not a project, not a responsibility. She turned to face them fully. We are an independent civilization. We're willing to talk as equals, but we will never accept subordination, no matter how peaceful you believe it to be. The silence that followed was heavier than any threat. In that moment, the alien delegation understood something that no first contact scenario had ever prepared them for. Humanity had not only discovered the galaxy, they had judged it and found it wanting. The negotiation chamber aboard the Prometheus was almost disappointingly plain. There were no towering columns, no holographic murals of past triumphs, no symbolic displays of power. A simple table occupied the center of the room, surrounded by functional seating designed for comfort rather than intimidation. Soft lighting eliminated harsh shadows. Every element of the space suggested a single priority: clarity. Ambassador Zalfak sat opposite Captain Sarah Chun, his earlier confidence replaced by careful calculation. Across from him, General Brethar remained silent, his thoughts consumed by tactical projections that refused to resolve into anything favorable. Elder Wisdom Keeper floated slightly above the floor, ancient awareness weighing consequences that stretched far beyond this single room. For the first time in Confederation history, first contact had turned into negotiation between equals. Let me ensure I understand, Zalfak said slowly. Your species has known of galactic civilization for over 5 decades. During that time, you deliberately chose isolation while building a military force capable of resisting Confederation integration. Yes, Chun replied, though I would phrase it differently. We built the capability to defend our independence. The fact that it can resist you is incidental. Brethar let out a low, humorless sound. Incidental, he repeated. Your incident could dismantle half our regional fleets. Dr. Elena Vasquez activated a display beside them. Star charts filled the air, dense, layered, and unsettling. These are human monitoring assets, she explained. Long-range sensor platforms, deep space reconnaissance vessels, signal interception arrays. Red and blue markers spread across dozens of systems. We currently maintain active surveillance on 43 neighboring star systems, Vasquez continued, including several beyond Confederation borders. Zalfak stared at the display. Why? Elder Wisdom Keeper answered before Chun could. Because you do not believe the galaxy is as peaceful as we claim it to be. Chun inclined her head slightly. Correct. We've identified at least 3 non-Confederation civilizations expanding aggressively in outer regions. They do not negotiate. They do not integrate. Brethar frowned. Our peacekeeping forces are optimized for compliance and piracy suppression, Vasquez interrupted gently, not existential war. The words landed with surgical precision. Silence followed as the Confederation representatives confronted an uncomfortable truth. Their fleets were symbols of authority, not instruments of survival. Centuries of peace had shaped them into guardians of order, but not defenders against those who rejected order entirely. You're saying we're vulnerable, Zalfak said. I'm saying peace unbacked by strength is temporary, Chun replied. And the galaxy is larger than your assumptions. Elder Wisdom Keeper felt something shift within his ancient mind. For millennia, the Confederation had believed uniformity was stability. Diversity had been encouraged only within carefully managed boundaries. Humanity represented a flaw in that philosophy, proof that a civilization could value cooperation without surrendering autonomy. "What do you propose?" he asked quietly. Chun folded her hands on the table. "Recognition. Humanity will not accept junior membership. We will not accept oversight, population controls, or technological restrictions." "And if we refuse?" Brethar asked. Vasquez answered instead. "Then nothing changes. We continue monitoring. We continue preparing. We remain independent." The implication was clear. The Confederation could neither coerce nor contain humanity without risking a war it was unprepared to fight. Zalfak exhaled slowly. What if we offered full membership?" The words seemed to hang in the air, fragile and unprecedented. "Equal status," Wisdom Keeper clarified, "with full rights and responsibilities." Chun's eyes narrowed slightly, not in suspicion, but calculation. "Define responsibilities." "Contribution to galactic stability," Wisdom Keeper said. "Mutual defense, shared intelligence, strategic cooperation." Vasquez brought up another display, this one detailing Confederation military deployments. "Your forces lack deterrence against hostile expansion," she said bluntly, "but they excel at coordination, logistics, diplomacy." Chun considered this for a long moment. "You're suggesting a partnership?" "Yes," Wisdom Keeper said. "Not absorption, not guidance." Brethar's voice was low. "You would become protectors." Chun met his gaze evenly. "We already are. We just don't advertise it." The final agreement took 6 hours. When it was finished, it represented something entirely new in galactic history. Humanity was recognized as a sovereign civilization, an independent ally rather than a subordinate member. In exchange, humans agreed to provide military consultation, defensive technology sharing, and strategic support for Confederation peacekeeping operations. No population limits, no cultural oversight, no restrictions on exploration. As the alien delegation prepared to depart, Elder Wisdom Keeper lingered behind. "You have changed the galaxy," he said to Chun, "whether it is ready or not." Change. The shuttle departed the Prometheus, vanishing into hyperspace alongside fleets that now carried reports capable of reshaping galactic politics. Across the stars, civilizations would soon learn that the Confederation's perfect system had encountered its first true variable. On the observation deck, Chun watched Earth turn slowly below, blue, fragile, and fiercely defended. Humanity had not announced its arrival to the galaxy. The galaxy had simply realized it had never been alone. And this time, peace would not be granted by tradition or authority. It would be guarded by those strong enough to defend it against whatever emerged from the darkness between the stars.